It's the official NRL Fantasy Podcast.
Here we go. Live. 6:30, of course, on a Thursday. Game or no game, it means we're here. Paulie G, Daniel Long, Erik Wells. Thanks for joining us, gentlemen.
Mate, it's good to be here. Pumped up for the final week of trials before we get really into the footy. So, going to be watching closely.
Yeah, Erik, you were obviously with us on the Tuesday show, so now we know everything. Latrell, Cam Murray, like a lot of changes in what was Ferris Bueller's line? You know, things change pretty quick around here.
Well, that was one of the things we were discussing around do we or don't we with Latrell, and I think we got our answer only a couple of hours later.
Yeah, pretty crazy, Longy, like just the news.
Yeah,
right?
so that was one of the things we were discussing.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate. So South Sydney, they looked like a team that were going to be on the up this year. You know, Bennett comes in. It was all positive. I was excited about them. They've had some really bad luck there. And I think, look, it impacts Latrell, obviously, 6 to 8 weeks. But Tyrone Munro is a guy who I had a lot of faith in. And now I'm looking at South and thinking there's not going to be enough to support him. So there's a lot of impact from that injury.
Might go from the backs to the forwards because the skill players to just the workers. Lachlan Hubner, he's going to get a chance. You'd think Tallis Duncan might get an opportunity. We've liked him for a while now. So maybe it's just a matter of pivot from your Mamazelloses and Munros and the Trells and instead go Hubner and Tallis Duncan.
I mean, let's see who wins the spot, right? Because Koloamatangi, if it's him, last year at games at lock with 60-plus minutes, it was a 67 average. So I'm hoping for him. I really want Koloamatangi in my side for once.
That was enjoyable last year, I've got to say. Anything else, Longy, that you got out of the team lists that Erik and I might not have covered with Lukey on Tuesday?
I mean, there's a bunch, right? So we see Dewey in the halves. If there's an injury, that could be interesting at some point for him to step in. Twile at lock over Jack Bird. I'm sure you guys talked about that a bunch, but I'm not panicking just yet. I think.
Oh, really? Still Bird? Still on the Bird?
I'm still Team Bird. Well, they might just be playing off the bench in this trial. They know who he is, but the other side of it is maybe he comes off the bench and plays 60 minutes, in which case he's probably a 40 to 45 guy. So I'm still very open. He's sitting in my side right now, and I'm maintaining the delusion as long as I can.
Well, don't forget, if you're listening on the podcast, we do this live at YouTube, on the NRL page, every Thursday, 6:30 to 7. So it means you get your questions in and we answer them, right? So why don't we do that right now and answer some of the viewer and listener questions. Who have we got first up? It's Sales. Good to see you, Sales. Thoughts on Jai Gray if he gets fullback? He was good last year, I thought, Long.
Yeah, he's a good player. He's priced up right now, so I think he's $545K. So I don't think there's a lot of value in him. He's about the same price as a Pappenhausen, who I like more, and more expensive than Greg Marzhew, who I think is going to outscore him. So I'd go other ways, but if you're a believer, then hop on.
Fair enough.
While we're waiting there too, Payne Haas named. Hopgood named. Like a few of these guys under injury clouds named. We get to see them.
Munster.
Opens up some pods in the middle. Munster, yeah, I'm keen to see him play.
Took a minor. Yeah. I was surprised he got the starting role. Terrell May.
Yeah, that's exciting.
It's going to be a great week 3 of the Witzer preseason, that's for sure.
Oh, yeah. I'd love to see Campbell step into the side at some point in that Titans game as well, because he's on the extended bench, but him and Brimson, how does that go? You know, Brimson 26 kick meters last week. Does that track again with Campbell, or does that change up? That's what I want to see.
You like Campbell, don't you?
I have Campbell in my team as it stands right now. I just reckon he is such a beast. So few kick meters last year. I think it was 168 a game. So you can bump that up, keep the attack going. You had Tino, you had RCG. He could be unstoppable.
Round 1 bye. Interesting pick.
Big pod, man. Big pod. I mean, if you want to win, you've got to go somewhere where no one else goes. So a Campbell or a Beau Fermor. I've seen a few teams with Dave Fifita that I actually quite like the look of as well, but I'm too high on Angus Crichton to go Dave Fifita. So, yeah, it would be crazy.
Yeah, look at this. Bloor with Munster. That's a fair call.
Yeah, this is a really good shout. Erik, I'll throw to you because I've been talking nonstop. What do you think of this one?
Yeah, well, I mean, this is the love and joy of the last week of the trials and seeing some of these big names played. So we really get a decent look in, at least for what we assume will be at least the first half of the preseason challenge games for this week. So pretty excited to see this. I mean, it's a match that surely should pay off. And Munster having a full off season in his belt, no injuries, no niggles. We're hoping for some good things. So I think, especially as we discussed it on the weekend, on the Tuesday show, Paulie, that when the Storm miss out 1 week, they come back with a vengeance, and the team they've named is definitely looking that way. So it'll be an interesting game this week.
Yeah, well, let's look at some of the games. You've got Manly and the Panthers. So what do you think about that? I mean, that's Panthers obviously can't name any of their guys. Manly, though, I thought it was interesting, their back line, like some guys getting rested, some guys playing. Garrick's captain. I don't know, Longy. Jazz Tavanga.
Yeah, I mean, that's the one that's worth reading into, right? Yeah. But Tavanga in particular, he's a guy who pumps out big PPM. Manly have options at hooker. And if he steps into that hooker role, plays 50-odd minutes, he'll pump out 40-plus points a game. So that sort of low 400s mark, he's a guy who could potentially be decent through that first period and then maybe carve himself a role off the bench too, because Lockie Croker's not eating up 80 minutes either. So I'm interested in Tavanga, but not convinced. I need to see him tear up this weekend.
So a couple of years ago, I was on the Cardi party, right? I love myself a party, so that was it. I'm getting a bit older now, and I think it's time I just divert. I'm going to be part of the Jazz Club. A bit more refined, a bit more sophisticated. I'm in my 40s, so it's time. It's time. Jazz Club, I'm it. I don't care if anyone wants to join me or not. I'm going to be sitting there front and centre, just watching the Jazz and soaking it up.
Bringing the A material today, Paulie. I love it.
That would be my definite Manly option, although I've got to say at the moment I've got Garrick and Turbo as well, so I'm going heavy on Manly. What about West Tigers v the Eels? It's my team v yours, Longy. We won't forget about you too, Eric. We'll get to the Knights, but were you shocked with this Alex Twal news going ahead? Was that a surprise?
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to rationalise it and sort of say, they know who Jack Bird is. He's played a decade in the league. They don't need to see him. But they know who Twal is too. So I can't really tell what this is. I'm hoping Jack Bird comes on and plays in the middle and plays big minutes. The other thing I'm reading into here is they've lost David Clemmer. So Twal should be needed in the prop rotation, which should mean that Jack Bird eats up a lot of those lock minutes. So I'll be watching closely. I need Jack Bird to play a good game of footy. That's the big thing. Pass the eye test, earn those minutes, because his playmaking is going to be really important to the Tigers this year if he can pass the eye test. So right now I'm a believer, but you're a Tigers fan, so you might have a bit more insight here. Do you think Bird's going to play meaningful minutes?
No, I don't have any insight, unfortunately, specific to the West Tigers. I do feel like him being named on the bench, for me, I was always worried about him because I guess of his injury history. Royce Hunt could become a bit more interesting now because of the Clemmer news. I was probably going to anti-pod Royce Hunt, but I think we're going to take a really close look at him this week. I think we're going to take a close look at what Bird does, and I think we've got to take a close look at what Stafford Toa and even Brent Naden, who was very good in the All-Stars. I know he's done it before in All-Stars and it hasn't translated to the full season. But I just think that could be the way to go.
Yeah, Royce Hunt's interesting. The antipod makes sense. So he has 3 career games over 40 minutes, right? So to expect him to jump to 40, 50 minutes is a bit far-fetched, but at 274K, I don't know. I find him in and out of my squad pretty consistently. I haven't settled on him yet.
And those Parramatta Eels, well, Israel Yongi, I feel like he's a must-have, but then you're looking at Kelma, you're looking at, they were...
Yep.
Where are we going second row-wise? That seems to be up in the air.
I mean, they were red hot, so destroyed the Knights last week, Eric, which was beautiful to watch. There's a few things in this parasite that I want to talk about. And look, Jack Williams is one. Starting at prop there, he's been training the house down. I know we always say this. He's part of the leadership team at Parramatta as well. If he's the starting prop and plays 50-odd minutes, he's pumped out big numbers as a starter in the past. So it's a questionable call, but he might potentially be someone that jumps into consideration next week. I'll throw in Kelmer. He's playing for a spot there. And then Jermaine Hopgood coming back early is really good news if you want to pot up with him. But I'm a little worried about the minutes. I guess it is boosted a bit by the fact that Sean Lane is out till about round 4. So this Parramatta side, we're going to have to watch and see. And really, they're playing to impress Jason Rolls. So if they do, I'd expect them to take minutes as the season goes on.
Next game is the Dragons v the Rabbitohs. South's been hard hit. With injuries, Terry Evans asks, with the injuries at the Bunnies, who's the move, Keon or Hubner? Eric, what's your thoughts?
Well, this week they're both named. They're both on the field starting. So this is why we have these trials, and that's why we're pretty happy with the team list. I think this week is that even the surprises is still going to be worth a watch. So I think this is going to be the week that you really want to be watching the games. It is a bit tricky to get the stats sometimes on some of these players. So during the trials, so I think this is if you've got a week to watch footy, apart from obviously the actual season games, this is the one to watch. So Hunbird, obviously, if he's going to get the start, I can obviously see him getting into quite a lot of teams. I don't have many stats on him in any of his lower grade runs. Have you guys seen much of him at all?
Yeah, well, Hubner played a bit for the Dolphins, so I think that he's a Wayne Bennett guy. We know what Wayne Bennett does. He's that hard worker, a bit of a, I guess a bit of a Max Plath clone type of player. Not saying he's going to do what Max Plath does, and he hasn't been around as long. Plath took a few years to get going, but that's what you're looking at. He was a hooker. He's now playing mid, and I just think that's top of Bennett. Bennett's always loved those sorts of players. So I just think for mine, 250k, you can't go wrong. Like this is nothing can go bad by picking him. This is a good question by Logan Courtney about Tallis Duncan as well. They're both in my side at the moment. I've got to say Hubner and Tallis Duncan. Longy, would you talked about Colomatungi earlier, but would you look at Tallis Duncan?
Yeah, Duncan's a fantastic young player. So first question is, does he earn that spot and keep that spot? I think on pure talent, he can absolutely do that. It's just a question of whether he gets chosen for that spot. So if he wins the starting lock spot, I'm a fan. If he's a starting edge back row, I'm probably a fan too. So if he's starting, I'm on Tallis Duncan.
So we looked at that Souths team pretty closely. What about the Dragons team? David Clemmer is potentially going there. So I was keen on the Couchman twins, Toby and Ryan. I was happy with their scores last week compared to their price. But Eric, now we've got to be a bit worried because Clemmer could eat into their minutes.
I think with Clemmer, I mean we've watched the effort areas that he put in at the Knights, and then since he's moved to the Tigers, there was very much a drop in a lot of effort areas, especially his fantasy relevance game. I think he lost about 15 points off his base thereabouts. So he's one to watch. He's not one to pick up straight away. It's kind of like I'm trying to think of somebody. I think he's going to fall into a bit of a same mold as IPAPS as well. He went to a different club, got a bit quiet. Well, same club, got very quiet when he was at the Tigers. Now he's at a bit more involved club now, I think, and I think he's going to have to step up a bit if he's going to start, especially. And he's a senior player now, so. Whether he takes a back seat and just plays that back end role off the bench as a bit of an impact, but he's starting to slow down, or if he's going to really take charge there, that's again we want to see him play. He's not one. I don't think anyone can really pick him up ahead of time because at the moment he's priced at how he went.
Yeah, but I'm just worried more, I guess, Longy, about how it's going to affect the Couchman twins.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. So Clemmer effectively is a minute sponge. So as fantasy coach, look, I like him as a player. He led the league in post-contact meters a number of years for props, but in terms of fantasy, he just sponges up some minutes and takes some upside away from some other guys at St. George who could easily step into that. So, Couchman is a fantastic shout, really good PPM, but a Jack DeBellin, he is less appetizing as well. So I just think it means that the middle forward rotation at St George is less interesting. And if you want to go St George forward, you're probably looking at either Damien Cook or Luciano Leilua, who is a monster pod. Do you want to hear it?
Spicy.
I'll give you the feel. So I shout out to Blindside who shouted this one out to me, but 560K has averaged 50 plus in the past. If you can get that 80-minute roll, which is not certain at all, he could be a guy who at that price point is massively undervalued. And look, we're looking at guys like Horsburgh, Gilbert. I think Luciano should be in that conversation as well.
And we move on to the Broncos and the Bulldogs. I think this will be a good game. Norman Daniel asks what we think about them. Reece Walsh, now that Latrell is not playing, I think Reece Walsh comes into definite target, right? If you don't want to go Kalen Ponga. I'm still keen on Kobe Hetherington. A lot of people are calling it trap. Jack Goshevsky's probably riskier, but he's also cheaper. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, Walsh he's one of those guys. We've talked about this wing fullback. He, on his day, can be as good as anyone. Just keep in mind, if you buy Walsh, he might be on 3 points at halftime and end the game at 90 points. So you got to be patient, take it easy, and sort of give him time to work his magic. Hetherington, I'm waiting for the eye test, so I want to see him play this week. Haas is back, Carrigan's back. They've got the full, well, not the full, but nearly the full squad there. So let's see how Hetherington interacts with those guys, because it's a new coach and he's really playing for minutes here. Jezewski's exactly the same.
And Corey Pakes, Eric, what are you thinking about him?
I'm so sorry, you glitched up for me. I'm sorry, Paulie.
Corey Pakes.
Corey Pakes. Look, everyone was on Mozart. I think more of a price point than anything. But look, he's got the opportunity because everyone else seems to either be out of favour or he's now injured. So, I mean, there's a lot of value already. We've got Mamazoulis already, and not only that, because of Mamazoulis' ownership, it takes the risk off owning him because if he doesn't go too well, he's not going well for everybody. So, look, if you're really pushing or you just have that extra emergency spot and you want that backup hooker spot, I mean, if he's going to start, then that's great. But, again, we need to watch this week. Hetherington can slot in there too, so we've got to watch that rotation this week.
Got to talk about the doggies now. The fans are wanting it. Top 4 says Hooves. People are on Matt Burton. Longy. I'm not a Matt Burton fantasy fan. I'm very much a fan of him in real life. What's your thoughts?
Look, there's so much value in the halves. It's impossible for me to get Burton. So in draft leagues, I do a few fantasy drafts, and I'm grabbing Burton in a few of those. But for a classic team, I can't go past Cleary, Munster, Luai, Sandon Smith, Tom Duffy, Metcalf. Yeah, there's so many halves. So I'm not jumping on Burton.
Interesting.
Yeah, well, if he gets the spot right, that's the key.
Hard to have a Bulldog. Kurt Mann's the one you're interested in, Eric, I believe. And then Sales is talking up Reed Marnie.
Yeah, Reed starts good normally. So
yeah, we've seen. No, you go.
Oh yeah, I was just going to say Reed normally starts well. So the missed tackles normally creep up a bit through the year. If we're looking at hookers as well, I want to throw Reece Robson into the mix. So first 5 weeks of the last 2 seasons, he's averaged 55 and 62. But then the last 8 weeks, he's averaged 39 and 42. So he starts super hot, Reece Robson, and just cools off as the year goes on. So if you want to invest at hooker, I think round 1's a good time to do it. And I'm going away from the guys like Corey Pakes to invest in a big hooker.
Interesting. Next game in the Witzer preseason challenge week 3 is Dolphins v the Titans. And I've got to say, I'm impressed by what the Dolphins are doing. I'm impressed by the fact Tom Gilbert's got the lock roll. I'm impressed by the fact Kulikefu Funifuyaki's got the second row. I'm not sure what's happened to Connie Lemuelu. So that's a wait and see. But at the moment, I'm jamming both Gilbert and Funifuaki into my lineup. Either of you guys got an opinion on that?
Funifuyaki's always just needed that start, right? He's had a few starts, but if he's named on that bench, he's just never worth having a look at, just because minutes are always a struggle for that bench edge for any team. So I think he's worth a go as long as he gets there named round one. He's there now for the preseason challenge, so I'm hoping he's going to go there for whatever reason, because we wanted Lemuelu there last year. He was the one that everyone had, especially with that centre dual positioning, but for whatever reason he's left right out at the moment on this trial. So it'll be interesting, definitely, and as well just to see how many minutes he gets. As these trials, they can really alter your minutes quite a bit. So if he gets a lot of minutes in this trial, I can't imagine why he wouldn't also get those same minutes in round one.
We'll just quickly go to the Titans before we get some more of the questions, just to finish off this. Team by team, AJ Brimson and Kieran Foran, Longy. That was one we weren't expecting.
So the numbers last week, because we talked about this last week a bit, we wanted to see the kick meters. That was the big thing. Last week, AJ Brimson had 26 kick meters in a game where Kieran Foran pretty much dominated that. Campbell played in the All-Stars game, had about 100 kick meters, so he was next to Puru, who's a pretty noted kicker in reserve grade. So to me, that's a win for Campbell. I'd love to see the two of them together on the field and just count how many kicks each one takes. But I think my indication here is that if Brimson was going to kick this year, he would have done it in that trial game. So I think he's going to be that running six. And I think Campbell's going to be, like you said, KO Weeks 2.0 plus a more robust running game and a better set of base stats. So, mate, he could be the top wing in fantasy, Jaden Campbell. Mate, I'm buying into this way too hard.
Yeah, I don't know if I could take him round one, but I'll be watching closely. I'll be triggering for sure.
I mean, the loophole, though, like you get him in, you can loophole at the half spot or the wing fullback spot. And we have so many dodgy halves and wing fullbacks that we haven't seen yet. So I'm into the idea right now. But, we'll see if it sticks before round one.
2 more games to preview. What about the Roosters and the Knights?
Yep.
Mark Nawaqanitawase, I thought was a bit below where I was hoping. So Rob Toa instead. I know we spoke about it already, Eric, but Longy, add your 2 cents into that one. Which centre would you rather?
Yeah, big fan of big centres who run the ball and break tackles. That's what I'm here for. And Rob Toya, he's a guy who in reserve grade pumped out 150 metres, 6 tackle breaks a game. In that trial game, he had it was 7 tackle breaks a game in reserves. In the trial game, it was 6 tackle breaks, 120 metres. So, yeah, he's a guy I'm very excited about. I don't think he needs to be spoon-fed the ball. I think he's going to go get it, and he's going to run over guys. So he's a starter for me right now, and I hope he gets that starting spot round one.
Siwa Wong, Eric, could he be a bit of a bolter back in? I feel like we're flashpoint from 12 months ago this time.
Absolutely. I mean, that spot's a pretty saucy spot. It's also Cheese is missing. Where's Cheese? So we've also got to find out where he fits, if he fits at all. So that's the main thing, because that's where we would have expected Connor Watson to be. And this little juggle up, is this just for the trial? That one's the weird one for me, and that's the tricky part for Wong. But we tried Wong last year; it didn't quite work out for us. So let's hope he.
I think they'll share, right?
Break our hearts again. Eh?
Radley will play edge in defence, so that helps Wong's tackle count. So even a 40-minute role, and Nat Butcher can do the same thing, where he can play middle in defence and an edge attack. I think that's what they'll do.
So Navahu White, he's the one who's downgraded for mine. The PPM historically, he needed sort of 50-odd minutes, and I don't think he's going to get it playing off the bench. So he's a guy I've dropped right down my rankings.
Yeah, he'll be one to watch whether he can tear May out off the bench. We'll have to wait and see. Sales just worries that Cheese could move Watson to 5'8". That would not be good if you're a Sandon Smith owner.
So we're going to sell Connor Watson before Origin, regardless of what happens, right? Roosters' bye schedule is brutal, and Connor Watson's probably going to be on the bench for Origin. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. You've got a good period of time where Connor Watson's going to pump out 60 a week for us before we have to deal with it.
And Kalen Ponga's playing for the Knights this week, Eric, your team. So that's good, right? We want to see him in action. And Dylan Lucas, how exciting, because he was awesome in the All-Stars game.
We got to come up with that name still for the Lucas train, so that's still our homework, Paulie. So we but it's definitely. Hopefully, it's going to be a little bit nicer viewing for the Knights fans for this week, especially with the lineup. So, but generally with trials or preseason challenges out at Industry Stadium, I don't think our record really helps too much. But it's definitely going to be at least a nicer viewing. See a little bit more of those combos that just simply due to All Stars or just the lighter stage set from Adam O'Brien from last week. So hopefully we'll see a little bit of better outing this week.
I was going to say,
a little bit more hope for the fantasy punters.
While I'm at the Jazz Club, you're listening to Dylan.
Yeah.
Wow. It'll be interesting to see too where Ponga pops up. So there's a lot of talk about Marzu, Best, Lucas. If Ponga plays down that left edge a bunch, I'm probably going to own 2 players out of that 4. But if he's playing all over the place, not combining with Best too much, then I might not have too many Newcastle players.
Before we get to our last game,
and the sharp
season challenge,
and the sharp combo too.
Yeah.
Let's go to Ross Lapthorne. Good to see you, Ross. Going Burton over Munster. What's your thoughts? Pakes versus Mamazilis. I can only stomach one of them. I'm not sure I'm going to have either of those two, to be honest. I'm a bit of an Aaron Clark fan, as well as obviously Jazz and Connor Watson. So I'm not sure if either of those guys make it in my team. But what do you think about Burton over Munster? We did suggest Burton could be a bit of a trap.
It's about budget, right? It's, how much money do you have? So for my team, I have to use Munster because he's a lot cheaper. But if I was betting on who was going to be the biggest scorer this year, I would say Burton, not by enough to justify the price though. So I'm leaning Munster, but just keep in mind he does have that bye round too. That's my main thing. And then Mamazelis over Pakes is a clean one as well. Pakes' historical average when he starts is 32 points in 57 minutes. So it's not good viewing. Yeah, not great.
Last game is Storm v the Cowboys. And we've just talked about Munster, so that's a good one for there. And then Harry Grant, I guess, Eric. Would you consider Harry Grant and just, spend up at hooker?
Yeah, well, I mean, he's got Munster back full time now, so that's one combination that they didn't get to take advantage of too much last season. So that spine has had now full off season, hopefully injury free. And hopefully it stays that way for the Storm at least. So I think we are going to see an uptick from him. I think we're pretty disappointed as grand owners last year, as he just didn't seem to fire as much. But it was a pretty impacted season for the Storm and at least the spine in particular. So look, I'm hoping for those who want to pick him up. I think he is a little bit underpriced if he can kind of fight back and get that. Get that real big like football head back on him again. He just was very quiet last season, so I'm really hoping to see him turn around for the game as well. I think Harry Grant's just a great to watch.
You throw in a Turkamani,
I think last season I think he's probably finished with a little bit.
A lot of guys there.
Yeah, him
to
too.
Watch.
So
traditionally, Storm. Just traditionally, Storm middles aren't usually ones we pick up, so he could be the exception. So we'll have to see how that works out too.
Let's talk about the Cowboys quickly as we're about to finish up. Tom Duffy, Longy, I need your 20-second pitch for or against.
Starting half in a side that has a good forward pack and a decent back line. A lot of attention drawn by Scott Drinkwater, so he's going to have his chances and potentially a goal kicker at base price. I think you should be selling me the case against him because I can't think of one. Job security is a bit dicey. That's probably it. But if he's starting round 1, he's a must-have.
Just chuck him in. Some people even playing him in their 17. Eric, Longy, thanks so much. We're doing a draft show next week, so make sure you stay tuned to that on NRL.com, on all the fantasy channels here at YouTube. And, of course, the Tuesday podcast. That's live, Teamlist Tuesday. Vegas, baby. Can you believe it? Viva Las Vegas. It's here pretty much, right? But before Vegas, we do have Witzer preseason challenge. Week 3. You've got to watch all the games. I'm telling you, you're going to get very useful information. Watch it on Foxtel and KO. And we'll be back next week to dissect it all for you. We love doing it and we love taking your questions. If you're listening on the podcast next week, why not come down live on YouTube, 6:30 to 7 and ask us some questions. But until then, it's bye for now.
It's the official NRL Fantasy Podcast.